Committee, in a continuation of our efforts to unify the Democratic Party, to help ensure that the voters of our states support the nominees of this convention and still retain their self-respect, we request delegates from all states to join with us in rejecting that portion of Section 4 of the proposed platform entitled Civil Rights. We call upon delegates from all the states of the Union, north, south, east, and west, to join with us in defending against the calculated effort which is being made by the radicals of both political parties to drive the states of the South from the Democratic Party. Upon the adoption of the proposed civil rights plank in the meeting of the Platform Committee yesterday, July 11, 1960, the states that have signed this dissent filed a simple objection, stating that we emphatically repudiated those provisions incompatible with the Constitution of the United States, which undertakes to establish an indestructible union of indestructible states. We asserted then, and we assert now, that the rights of man, which is the purported theme of this platform, can be protected only by the observance of the constitutional division of delegated powers between the federal and state governments, and by strict adherence to the constitutional guarantee that all powers not delegated by the states to the Union are reserved to the states or to the people. The 10th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States is a part of the Bill of Rights, equal in force and dignity to the First Amendment and all of the other amendments which do comprise our Bill of Rights. When a court or a legislative group or an executive disregards or violates the rights of a state under the 10th Amendment, thereby the rights of the people under the First Amendment to worship, to read, to speak, to print are jeopardized. A mere majority which can today ignore the 10th Amendment can tomorrow ignore the First Amendment and all the others. In this platform plank it is stated, and I quote, "The right to vote is the first principle of self-government. The Constitution also guarantees to all Americans the equal protection of the law." End of quotation. Now these sentences are very high-sounding, but they ignore a proper application of the Constitution of our United States. Repeatedly, the Supreme Court of the United States has held that a person's right to vote is derived from the laws of a state. The state prescribes the ages. The state prescribes the ages, the length of residence required, the educational qualifications required, and all other reasonable qualifications it deems necessary and advisable for the general welfare of its citizens. The only constitutional restrictions on this right of any state is that it shall not be abridged or denied by reason of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. While the 14th Amendment to the Constitution, adopted in 1868, prevents a state from denying to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws, that amendment was long ago construed so as to allow a state even to prevent women from voting. The 14th Amendment did not prevent a state denying to its female citizens the right to vote. That right was secured only by the 19th Amendment, adopted about 40 years ago. The members of Congress, senators and representatives, are chosen by the people of the several states comprising this union. They are answerable to their people at home. What is their duty, what is their code of ethics, is to be determined by them and those who choose them. They have the power under the Constitution to enforce that document and all amendments to it by appropriate legislation. What is or is not appropriate legislation under the powers delegated to Congress is for determination by the courts. It is the duty of the President to see to it that the laws, not rights, are fully executed. The President has nothing to do with any right unless and until that right has been constitutionally established by law. For 6 years and 2 months now, there has been a rising demand that the South should obey the law of the land, so-called, and establish systems of public schools, unsegregated as to race or color. Now, this clamor overlooks the fact that never has any court decided that any state could be compelled by anyone to set up a system of integrated schools. But those who have so chided the South for its alleged breach of the law of the land now foster not only breaches of the law of the land, but breaches of the peace. They condone and even sanction trespassings upon private property. Their encouragement and approval of sit-in demonstrations on a specious moral principle flout the declaration of the law of the land promulgated by a court, one of whose members is a distinguished former Solicitor General of the United States who participated in the argument of the school cases before the Supreme Court. By no stretch of the imagination can the Constitution of the United States be interpreted so as to assure equal access to all Americans to all areas of community life. A church, a social club, a fraternity, a sorority, a lodge, each is an area of community life. But neither
a Confederate
Congress
flag
nor
has
the
been
court
hoisted above the
has
Georgia standard.
constitutional power to assure the entrance into those areas of any or every American. The Supreme Court has recently held that the Civil Rights Act of 1957 is appropriate legislation under the 15th Amendment. If legislation has been needed, as the platform says, to secure for all Americans the right to vote, that statute alone would suffice. It has been used by an Attorney General, certainly as politically minded as any delegate here, used only 4 times. That it has not been used more frequently is not proof of the fact that he and the President are not strong and imaginative. It is proof of the fact that alleged abridgments or denials of the right to vote have been grossly exaggerated. For example, in a complaint against the state of Georgia recently, it was alleged that there were roughly 5,000 Negroes of voting age in a certain county of that state who were denied the right to vote. Upon the trial of a case arising from that complaint, the federal government admitted that only a meager 35 of those 5,000 had even applied for the right to vote, and that of those 35, only 10 were qualified. And yet the state of Georgia was pilloried before her sister states for denying the right of vote to thousands.
Bob Kennedy talking to Governor David Lawrence of
composed of American
Pennsylvania.
delegates to support, as the platform says, whatever action is necessary to eliminate literacy tests as requirement for voting, we believe is unthinkable. Even the most ardent Salvationists would have to admit that such action could be only in the form of an amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Very recently, the Supreme Court of the United States decided that the requirement by a state of reasonable literacy tests as a condition for voting was a proper exercise of its constitutional powers. Now, would you permit a man or woman who did not know his or her ABCs, who could not add 2 and 2, who did not know who was the President of the United States, who did not know who was the governor of his state or mayor of his city, to vote for or against candidates for these offices? For our part in the South, ladies and gentlemen, we are opposed to the establishment of a government by the ignorant and for the ignorant. Now, the liberal Salvationists among us have been shouting at this convention for the great need for education. More money to be spent on it than ever before in our history. And at the same time, and in this same platform document, they would abet ignorance and illiteracy. Now, apparently their credo is, boys, when it comes to voting, let's keep them dumb to be more easily herded to the polls like sheep. There is no constitutional requirement that racial discrimination be ended in public education. All that the courts have said on this subject is that if a state chooses to establish and maintain a public school system, the children in the schools of that system may not be segregated by the standard of race or color. If the people of any state choose to abandon their public schools rather than to integrate them, no court or Congress may compel the submission of any plan of compliance with a Supreme Court school segregation decision. And we, the undersigned, are here to say that the states of the South
Stevenson
will
is addressing
not be
a rally of his supporters
with
out in the
technical
grounds
and
of the
financial
arena just
assistance
outside the convention
held
hall.
out as bait in this platform into sacrificing their children upon the altar of political expediency. Now, most of the remaining paragraphs of this so-called civil rights plank in the platform constitute a synopsis of legislation which has at least twice been rejected by the Congress of the United States, a majority of whose members belong to the Democratic Party. Now, will the delegates to this convention lead their party to defeat with a halter of a platform framed upon the insistence of a radical wing of our party, a platform pledging our party to the support of legislation which not twice, but 3 times has been rejected by this very party? We submit from the South that this is one of the key questions of this convention. Now, fellow Democrats, if we would reflect upon it, the big evil of our confused day, not only here in the United States, but in countries the world over, is one thing: unlimited government. For nobody is qualified to wield unfairly unlimited power. And yet, what is the main activity of the liberals and the Salvationists in our party, who assert that they would bring to us a new, shining mass action democracy that would free us from the sad misconceptions of the past? It is the activity of ever-enlarging big government control, which always corrupts and always dehumanizes. In this matter of government-enforced social equality, which is threatening to engulf our accepted educational processes. For example, the so-called liberals are telling us that we of the South are unthinking, that we of the South are resisting change and the inevitable march of expanding democracy. But it is not change that we of the South are resisting, nor is it democracy that we of the South shun. We do resist the kind of change that will turn us more and more into a super state. We do resist the kind of change that will not just run us, but overrun us. We do shun the kind of democracy that believes big government alone, beyond any private institution or private will, has the wisdom and the compassion to deal with the problems of the future. We do shun the kind of democracy that from a pinnacle in Washington can tell people all over the land by what rules our schools should be run. To our minds, that is a burlesque of democratic living. It is a travesty of real democratic procedure. No government can become the final arbiter of all social, economic, and political difficulties because it simply does not have the capacity. The tougher our problems, the more that big government is inclined to wallow in indecision and complicate the remedies, until finally, frazzled and perplexed, it resorts to the age-old preachment of the tyrant. You accept the imposed order, or you feel the weight of this mailed fist. This is democracy. Actually, it is the refutation of the fundamentals of Americanism. You and I must always remain aware of the fact that our America is a land made up of many nations and many races, many traditions and many creeds. We must ever be mindful of the fact that our America was born in nonconformity, that our America grew great on diversity, on the right of people to be different, and that this pluralism or many-sidedness of our America, which is currently taking such a political whipping from self-styled liberals and angry leftists, is truly inseparable from the magnificent vitality of our great country. We should all pay heed to the strong conviction that in a representative democracy, men can indeed belong to the central political unit and enjoy at the same time the sustainment of their own particular faiths and their own particular fellowships. In all our considerations, let us remember this one thing about our presence in history, that the essential conditions of America's swift development and unusual progress has been freedom. Freedom to make social choices, freedom to promote our economy, freedom to elect our rulers. Freedom made America great, and that freedom gets its initial thrust and energy from the flexible and unregulated interplay of personal vitalities. Efforts to suppress this proper function inevitably produce the moral tensions, the disorders, and the confusions that we are experiencing in mounting crescendo today.
This is James Gray, a Albany, Georgia lawyer, a native of Massachusetts, reading the 3,000-word minority report of the Southern states to the civil rights plank of the platform.
We are convinced that our vigor will depart and that we will become something much less politically, economically, socially, and morally than we are today. We intend to stand for these beliefs, and we intend to fight for their preservation. And we trust that you good people will do the same. Respectfully submitted.
Time now for Betty Furness and something new from Westinghouse.
Well, Walter, I've just been telling my daughter, Babby, about our new Westinghouse Total Electric Gold Medallion home here in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
With electricity to mow the lawn? Oh, Mother, that's too much.
Well, why, dear? After all, this is a home designed by Nicholas Satterley, one of the 5 leading architects commissioned to design homes that provide the best in convenient electrical living.
Well, what about the women's world?
Well, if you were the lady of this house, you will get married someday, I assume, you would conveniently carry the groceries from the garage, A few steps into the food preparation center, where you'd store all your fresh meats and vegetables for a week in your new Westinghouse center drawer refrigerator.
Well, look at all those terrific built-in appliances. Even a complete laundry.
Of course, the heart of this and all Total Electric homes is clean, safe electric heating. Now, just set this Westinghouse thermostat once to control all of the heating. Another single quick adjustment for cooling for this Fort Wayne home all year round.
I'm sold, Mother. Now all I need is a husband.
Well, that's every young girl's major project here. But you know, as a starter, you might send for this free Westinghouse Plans Guide. It's full of plans and sketches for all 16 of the Total Electric homes that were designed for Westinghouse by 5 of the country's top architects. Actually, it'll interest anyone who's thinking of a home now or in the future. Now, anyone can get this booklet free just by writing to Westinghouse, Box A, Mansfield, Ohio.
Westinghouse, Box A, Mansfield, Ohio.
On the floor here at the convention hall, Senator Sam Ervin of North Carolina has just made a motion that the minority report to be substituted for the platform committee's plank on civil rights. We pause now for station identification.
Stay tuned for more convention coverage on the CBS television network.
Back on the floor of the convention hall here, the Honorable Louis McMurrin of Virginia has just been recognized with another minority report. Let's go back to the floor.
On page 49, the second paragraph, under fiscal responsibility, strike the words "some surplus for the gradual reduction of our national debt," and insert in lieu thereof the following words: "a surplus for the reduction of our national debt on a planned schedule." Oh, I see. Delegates, you've heard the
platform called for this wordage. We believe, moreover, that except in periods of recessions or national emergency, these needs can be met with a balanced budget with no increase in present tax rates and with some surplus for the gradual retirement of our national debt. He suggests a surplus be called for in the platform. Down on the floor, you see Sam Rayburn talking to Governor Robert Minor of New Jersey. Let's go back to the podium and Chairman Collins.
Under the control of the chairman of the Committee on Resolutions and Platform, the time of 1 hour for debate, both by the proponents as well as the opponents of the respective motions now pending, and the chairman having the discretion to make the allocation of that time as he feels is fair and correct for the presentation of the issues to you. I present again the chairman of your Resolutions and Platform Committee, Mr. Bowles.
We have arranged together proponents of the minority report and the opponents of the report a division, an equal division of the 1 hour that's been allotted. I have conferred with Senator Sam Ervin of North Carolina, who represents all of the proponents, and he has determined who will be recognized to speak in behalf of the minority report on civil rights. I shall now recognize them in the order and for the amount of time which he has proposed. The chair recognizes Senator Sam Ervin of North Carolina, for 6 minutes to speak in support of the minority report. Senator Ervin.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the convention, first I want to tell you something about my relationship to the Democratic Party. My family has been voting the Democratic ticket ever since Andrew Jackson was President of the United States. Furthermore, my wife is as near a kin to Andrew Jackson
as any other human being now living on the face of this earth. My son is a county chairman in my home county, and I believe that this tradition of support of the Democratic Party in my family will continue, because I have a grandson who's 4 years old. In December, my little 4-year-old grandson came up to my house on Sunday to have dinner with his grandparents, and one of the neighbors was there. And the neighbor said to my little grandson, said, "Jimmy, did you go to Sunday school this morning?" Jimmy said, "Yes, I went to the Presbyterian Sunday school." Then the neighbor said, "Jimmy, are you a Presbyterian?" Jimmy said, "No, I'm a Democrat." Now that's the kind of Democratic people I come from. I want to say this to you. I have a limited time to speak. I cannot go into details, but I ask you to vote to reject the provisions of the platform dealing with civil rights because they are unnecessary, because they are a violation of the basic principles upon which the government of this nation is founded. I'd like to say this. In my state, if I remember my history right, has only voted for a Republican candidate for president one time since the Reconstruction. It gave Harry Truman the largest majority of any state in the Union in 1948. It voted for Adlai Stevenson in 1952 and in 1956. And if I could do anything, and if I could have my way, it will vote for the Democratic nominee this time, regardless of whom he may be. Now, I want to say this. I am fundamentally a lawyer rather than a politician. I have spent my life in legal activities. And as a lawyer, I could say to you that there is no need now for the enactment of any more civil rights laws. There are sufficient statutes upon the statute books of this nation and upon the statute books of the states to secure civil rights to all Americans who are willing to have their rights judged by the same laws by which all other Americans' rights are judged. And the vice of all civil rights proposals lies in the fact that these proposals undertake to make special favorites of the laws of some people and excuse them from being required to have their rights judged by the same laws by which other men's rights are judged. And I want to say that these proposals in this platform for new civil rights legislations are absolutely incompatible with the basic principle of American law, that all laws shall apply alike to all people under like circumstances. Our Constitution has been described in a nutshell by the Supreme Court of the United States in these words: the Constitution, in all of its provisions, looks to an indestructible union composed of indestructible states. I say to this convention and to the American people that if these planks in the platform were enacted into law, they would destroy the system of government under which the America we have known and have loved has flourished and guaranteed freedom to all men. This is true because of these proposals, if enacted into law, would transfer from the state and local governments in all areas of the United States and vest in the centralized government at Washington the power to deal with all of the relations between the states and the counties and the municipalities, where the actions of those states, counties, and municipalities affect and touch citizens of the Negro race. And certainly we do not want all of the local government in the United States transferred from the local communities to Washington, because I can tell you, from having been in both places, that there's not near as much wisdom in Washington as there ought to be, and the people in the local communities know these problems better and are better qualified to deal with them. So I want to say this to you in closing. If you wish to preserve the America we have known and loved, America composed of an indestructible union composed of indestructible states, vote in favor of this motion to strike these proposals from this platform. Don't make it too hard for us to carry the South. It takes 269 electoral votes to elect a Democratic president. We have 127 of these votes in the South. And the South wants to vote for these for Democrat candidates for president. Don't make it too hard on us, because if you can hold the South with this 127 electoral votes, you won't need but 142 more out of all of the other states of the Union to elect a Democratic president this fall. I thank you.
The chair recognizes Governor Hollings.
Now we take you to another studio here at the Sports Arena in Los Angeles, where you'll meet Fred Davis and see what's new from Westinghouse.
Here's the most interesting story I've heard in this day when the prices of everything are going up. Every year, for 34 years, the average price per unit of electricity used in the home has come down. And Westinghouse has played a big part in bringing it down. Now, when you get your electric bill, you may not think the price is coming down, but that's because you use so much electricity. Electricity brings you music. And year after year, the price comes down. Electricity gives you light and cools your home. And every year, the price comes down. Electricity washes your clothes, cooks your foods, washes your dishes. And every year for 34 years, the average price per unit of electricity has come down. Well, this makes electricity the biggest bargain in your family budget. Westinghouse helps keep it that way through constant research. The job of this research is to develop more efficient equipment and systems for the electric power companies that supply your electricity and keep it the bargain it is today. You can be sure if it's Westinghouse.
Governor Ernest Hollings of South Carolina is now addressing the convention as the Southern delegates continue their assault on the strong civil rights plank suggested by the Platform Committee. Let's go back to the floor.
The safety of the people and the rights of the individual are subject to the safety of the whole. And it is striking strange that this convention, where you have the matter of a celebration or recognition, let's say, of a centennial in the platform for the end of slavery, that you try to endorse sit-ins, when you try to force a public or a personal service, rather, when you try to force a personal service and a private business, you have slavery. And isn't that ironical that we're going to use slavery and in order to endorse the centennial of the termination of it? Now, in days long ago, it is called arose once a king. He knew not Joseph. And in the past 30 years, there has arisen a generation who knows not the Constitution. Pressure groups have come in since the May 1954 Supreme Court decision, and like the sheepdog having tasted blood, has turned to gobble up the remaining rights of the individual, all in the name of promoting and protecting rights. And we see only last month the most recent of the Supreme Court usurpations and unconstitutionalities in the decision upholding the Civil Rights Commission, taking away the fundamental individual rights of knowing what you are charged of, the right of a warrant, the right of facing your accuser, and the right of cross-examining that accuser. My friends, we are seeing it day in and day out. And this is not a question of the South and where we stand in the party, but where this country is headed towards constitutional government or anarchy. I can simply say this, that we have a civil rights law in South Carolina, we have voting rights, and we mean to enforce it. And the national hypocrisy of this political so-called civil rights is pointed up recently by the Republican Attorney General on the matter of a patent of discrimination, the recent bill that passed the Congress when he announced as its enactment, like a warrior charging forward with the weapons of war, he says, now that I have this law, we can go ahead and punish the violator, naming one South Carolina community, which is our most law-abiding community. I defied that Attorney General to show me a single violation, much less a pattern of discrimination. And that's a typical example of the political hypocrisy and the lack of need of so-called civil rights legislation. And so it is that in South Carolina we ask, when you talk of a Civil Rights Commission, don't give us a Republican or a Democrat to enforce the law, a liberal or a conservative, a northerner or a southerner. We don't want anyone with a particular leaning. We want those with learning in law enforcement. And we say, let's use the FBI as a Civil Rights Commission and really protect the rights of the individual. And so it is, the issue at this convention in my brief moment is not one of the rights of man, but the government of man. And I can tell you now, as Democrats and as Americans, that South Carolina will continually fight, will never submit, but will continually fight to preserve the Constitution, our federal system of government, and the true individual rights of the American citizen. Thank you very much.
The chair recognizes Governor Barnett of Mississippi for 6 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, fellow delegates, ladies and gentlemen, as Governor of the state of Mississippi and as a delegate to this national convention, I denounce and condemn the proposed plank on civil rights as being offered by this convention by the Committee on Resolutions. I heartily endorse and unhesitatingly subscribe to the minority report that has been submitted on behalf of the 10 southern states. This minority report accurately states the position of the overwhelming majority of citizens, both white and Negro, in the 10 states which have subscribed to it. I know it accurately expresses the sentiments of millions of people in the United States who live outside the bounds of the southern states. The civil rights provisions in the proposed majority report on the platform are inimical to every concept of constitutional government as it has been known and accepted in this country. Various of the proposals plainly and unmistakably violate and infringe upon the reserved rights of the states to a degree that was undreamed of before the committee presented it to this convention. The rights of privacy and the choice of one's associates has always been considered the most fundamental freedom that could be enjoyed by a citizen of the United States. The government of the United States, regardless of any character of legislation enacted, is not going to coerce the people of the state of Mississippi to live with neighbors not of their own choice. Another of our most sacred and fundamental rights is the peaceful possession of private property and business establishments. It is a shocking thing, ladies and gentlemen, to find one of the great political parties in this country deliberately fomenting possible violence and unlawful activities in condoning trespassers against private property owners and private business establishments. In Mississippi and in every state in the South, the sit-in agitators in lunch counters and restaurants are acting in violation of established laws of the cities and the states. There is nothing in the United States Constitution or in any federal statute that gives it any local sanction from a federal standpoint. The right of a business establishment operator or of a private citizen to permit or deny entry upon his property has always been absolute and unconditional. When the course of conduct is condoned by any individual group or any organization, it is a condolence of lawlessness and an invitation to turmoil, strife, and violence. Insofar as the integration of the white and the Negro children in the public schools is concerned, I want to state to you that 99% of the Negro students and Negro teachers in Mississippi want no part of integrated schools. The entire agitation for the integration of white and Negro activities is an agitation that is forced upon the white and Negro people in Mississippi, not by Mississippians, but from people from outside of Mississippi. Ladies and gentlemen, neither this convention nor the United States Congress should be guilty of compounding the basic unconstitutionality of the Supreme Court decision in regard to desegregation. A school integration plank has no place, my friends, in the platform of the Democratic Party if the Democratic Party wishes the support of 50-odd million Southern people. To any sound and logical thinking American, the whole concept of forcing him to employ those not of his own choice is the ultimate of statism and denies basic fundamental freedom. Even more disastrous, my friends, this concept reversed would require other individuals to work for someone not of that choice and is absolutely equivalent to slavery. Thus, we would destroy the freedoms of our fathers, and ladies and gentlemen, we would also destroy the freedom of choice, which is dear to the American people. A Fair Employment Practice Act is also an assault upon the basic concept of free enterprise. If one were called upon to Sovietize America, the first step would be to pass a Fair Employment Practice Act. If America is to remain free, her people must never submit to any attempt to barter away any of our Constitution for political advantages. We must stand beside the Constitution.
That is James Roosevelt, son of the late president on the right, congressman from California.
That will lead the country further down the road to statism, regimentation, and nationalization. These United States are and always have been the namesake of a Republican form of constitutional government. Do not now, ladies and gentlemen, in the name of democracy, attempt to destroy this indestructible union and indestructible states. Thank you.
So now 3 of the Southern spokesmen have been heard in their complaints against the civil rights plank in the platform, as suggested by the platform committee. Outside this sports arena, you see a large demonstration for Adlai Stevenson. It's been going on now for more than an hour. He addressed this demonstration briefly as he left the hall a short while ago. Of Stevenson's support. The people of Los Angeles and surrounding area have been demonstrating for Stevenson outside the Biltmore Hotel for a week now, and their ranks have grown to large proportions here as they demonstrate outside the sports arena. Time now for Betty Furness and something new from Westinghouse.
Well, the news from Westinghouse, Walter, is the People's Choice Appliance Sale now going on at Westinghouse dealers all over the country. And here is just one of the wonderful items included in that sale. It's a convention special laundromat. Like all Westinghouse laundromats, it gives you more washing power. The exclusive Westinghouse washing action that lifts and dips, tumbles and plunges your clothes over and over again through hot, sudsy water. Washing action that means cleaner clothes every time. In addition, this laundromat has special wash settings for any type fabric. Big 10-pound capacity, automatic lint ejector, and the exclusive Westinghouse loading door. For really clean clothes, for the automatic washer with more washing power, be sure to see the People's Choice Laundromat. It's part of this big People's Choice Appliance Sale. Now, we know that you'll want to drop in at your Westinghouse dealer now during this sale. He has a special Get Acquainted offer. This gold anodized aluminum ice tray for only 97 cents. Models similar to this are a $2.95 value. So take advantage of the fantastically low prices on all appliances, including this new laundromat during the People's Choice Appliance Sale, and pick up your Get Acquainted ice tray. Remember? You can be sure if it's Westinghouse.
Governor Lindsay Almond of Virginia is now addressing the convention on behalf of the Southern Minority Report on the Civil Rights Plank. 10 states have signed that report, all but one of the states of the old Confederacy. That state that did not sign was the state of Texas, which is, of course, working hard for the nomination of Senator Lyndon Johnson on the presidential ticket. Let's go now to the floor and the speech of Governor Almond.
Virginia placed upon the statute books the most drastic and the most severe anti-lynching statute to be found upon the statute books of any state in the Union. Since that time, there has not been one single lynching in Virginia, nor has there been a serious attempt to perpetrate that dastardly crime. I object to this phase of the platform because it will, if enacted into federal law, or put into effect by executive directive or implemented by judicial fiat, it will invite not only in Virginia, but in places far beyond the boundaries of the Southland. It will invite disorder. It will serve to worsen racial relations throughout the length and breadth of America. It will set us back in our attempts to reconcile our differences consistent with honor and within the framework of the law, to bring harmony out of discord and to recognize the rights of all people under the law. It will invite people and encourage people to violate the proprietary rights of individual proprietors engaged in the performance and exercise of their businesses. Any American has a right under the Constitution to serve or not serve. You or me or anyone else in his place of business to encourage sit-in or sit-downs in violation of the property rights of the business people of America is to invite a form of lawlessness which will accomplish nothing but the deepening of the relations between the races. I thank you so much.
The chair recognizes Senator Holland of Florida for 6 minutes.
Senator Spessard Holland will be the last of the South speakers before rebuttal arguments are heard from members of the platform committee supporting the civil rights flank as recommended.
Whether you know it or not, is a serious moment in the life of America and in the life of the Democratic Party. The people who have spoken to you in the last 30 minutes are men who, as governors of their states, or Supreme Court judges, or United States senators, have been elected time after time because their people believed that they would carry honestly and keep the faith. Mr. President, I want every Democrat here to realize that nothing has caused this group of men to come before you so much as the effort to make it clear to you that what you're doing is, in our judgment, making it practically impossible to carry 10 states of the Southland in the election of November. And it is only that fact, Mr. Chairman, which makes us come here to issue this caution as lifelong Democrats. Mr. Chairman, this program is written around the sentiment, the rights of man. Too bad it is that in pursuance of such a lofty objective, this platform contains elements written by those who believe that the federal government can do everything, and that anything done by the federal government is right, no matter how it affects men. Let's look at this civil rights platform just a few minutes. The FEPC provision. I want you Democrats from this nation to know that FEPC in the Southland is a term that's almost an ugly term, and no candidate could be elected upon a blank which included it. Mr. Chairman, I want you to recognize the fact that half of the states in the rest of the nation have refused to adopt state FEPC programs. And yet, notwithstanding that, these well-meaning socialistic reformers have brought in a plank here which half of the states outside the South have never even been willing to adopt. I don't mind your booing, but just let me remind you that millions of people throughout the Southland, where live 50 million, mostly Democrats, are looking, are listening, and you're not helping the Democratic cause, nor are you hurting at all your speaker by this kind of conduct. Now, Mr. Chairman, what does the FEPC do? It destroys the right of selection of one's employer, of one's employees, and of one's fellow employees. Mr. Chairman, do you realize that hundreds of thousands of men who belong to labor unions in the Southland intend to continue to select their own fellow employees, and they're operating now in unions under that rule? Mr. Chairman, there is nothing that you can do which will more alienate the working men and women of the South than to adopt this general FEPC program. Second thing, I want to remind you of what's happening in connection with this school integration program. Aside from the fact that it does not follow, and the drafters didn't even understand the meaning of the federal court decisions, I want you to know that you're dealing with a matter which involves the personal, deep, sincere convictions of women in the Southland, women who are mothers and who have children and grandchildren at school, and who will never forgive a party or a platform which calls upon them to impose a federal judgment from Washington in contravention of customs and traditions and manners of life which are dear to them. If you want to give a front to the good women in a part of the nation where 50 million people live, just adopt a general FEPC program and try to put it through. You haven't been able to put it through, and as I've already said, half the states outside the South have refused it, and every southern state have refused to give it any consideration. Third thing, this Title III provision, in which you propose to give to every Attorney General, whether he be good or not so good, the power in his own discretion to bring injunction suits for any violation or threatened violation, as he may see it, of any civil right, and to proceed on the equity side of court with all of the force of contempt proceedings and without jury trial. Mr. Chairman, in 1957, the Senate of the United States turned this down by a heavy vote, and we have only 18 Southern senators there. Mr. Chairman, this year, in the debates earlier in the year, the Senate of the United States turned this provision down 3 times. Can it be that you're overlooking the fact that senators of conscience and conviction from throughout the nation have decided in their wisdom, and I think they're eminently wise, that no one man can be made the custodian of the morals and of the good sense of this whole nation with power so sweeping as is this. Mr. Chairman, I see that my time is up. I wish that our party was not seeking now, under the guidance of this ultra-liberal domination, to impose upon the Southland provisions which the Southland will not accept, and which will make the Southland, in the humble judgment of men on this platform and elsewhere who represent the South, will drive the Southland out of the house of our fathers, out of the Democratic Party in November.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I notice that there's a banner being carried in the aisles of this hall, and that's very strictly against the rules. Will the young man who is carrying the political banner remove it from this hall immediately? Remove the banner immediately. Banners are only permitted during the course of normally recognized parades, and that's not what we're engaged in now. Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
The 1/2 hour allotted to the proponents of the minority report has expired. The chair now recognizes the former Solicitor General of the United States of America, the Honorable Mr. Perlman of Maryland, for 4 minutes to speak in opposition to the minority report. General Perlman.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, the platform submitted to this convention by the committee on which I have the honor to serve gives the Democratic Party the opportunity to deal clearly, honestly, and completely with the subject of civil rights, human rights. From this day on, no one can have any doubt as to the official policy of the Democratic National Party with respect to those rights which have been withheld and the discriminations which have been imposed for so many years in violation, if not in deliberate defiance, of the Constitution and law.
Bill Leonard is in the arena with Adam Clayton Powell, the congressman from Harlem in New York. Come in, Bill.
Adam Clayton Powell has always been right in the midst of the civil rights fight. He's right in the midst of it here. Mr. Powell, I understand that you're delighted with the civil rights plank on the Democratic platform, right?
This is the most dynamic plank of either party in the history of American politics. It's very good.
These planks have a habit of being turned into sawdust.
That's correct.
What about this one? What practical effect might it have?
Well, in the first place, if the President of the United States does uphold the Supreme Court decision, I won't have to introduce the Powell Amendment anymore. In the second place, as the incoming chairman of the Committee of Education and Labor, I will accept the mandate of this platform and call up the FEPC bill, which I wrote 16 years ago, and will allow no other business of the Education and Labor Committee to be transacted until the FEPC has been reported out, and I expect to have it ready by Easter.
Well, now, in the realm of practical politics right here, what do you think the move to get excitement going about Adlai Stevenson has done in the last few hours from a practical standpoint? I ask you this even though you're for Symington.
Well, I like what happened because if this convention was rigged, the rigging is collapsing. There's a wind of free choice beginning to blow, and I think it's anybody's game tomorrow.
Suppose there was a move at the end of the first or second ballot to make it unanimous for Kennedy. Would you go along?
Absolutely not. I'm for Symington all the way and have been for 2 years.
So
the man with the best record in the Senate.
There's no chance of you switching and no chance of this being a unanimous convention. Is that it?
Not for me.
Thanks very much, Adam Clayton Powell of New York.
Thank
now
you,
back to Walter Cronkite.
And time now for Betty Furness and something new from Westinghouse.
And the dateline reads, Roanoke, Virginia, Walter, on a lovely summer evening. When night falls in Roanoke, Virginia, this house lights up like a firefly. It's a new total electric gold medallion home designed by Nicholas Satterley. See how lights make the outdoor living center perfect for evening entertainment. Now, let's turn the switch to daylight and meet the architect.
Hi.
Mr. Satterley is one of 5 top architects we've commissioned to create the best in total electric living. This is your budget house?
Yes, here in Roanoke it sells for $15,000. It's designed to make the most of a small lot.
Electricity helps out here with the barbecue, stereo, and TV.
From the front of the house, you'll see how this outdoor living center is integrated into the design.
The other side's the children's outdoor area, isn't it?
Yes, it's off the food preparation center.
Ah, so Mother can watch the children while cooking.